Hey folks, today's video is going to be on Tinto Talks 12. This was from last week. I've been away on vacation, so a little bit later covering this than usual. This week, I'll be right on it on Wednesday with the latest news, but this one's going to cover international organizations. If you're not sure what that means, think of, as Johan calls out at the beginning, the HRE, where it's a large organization, but within it, there are individual principalities, realms, kingdoms, things like that are loosely affiliated to something else, and they will be shown as like a group together on the map. Another prime example later on is like the Catholic Church with the Pope at its head. It's got some papal lands that they own directly, but then you will see kind of their sphere of influence, not the same as Victoria 3, kind of on the map, showing what else they have influence and sway over, and that like laws can be implemented in those regions. That's kind of how you want to think about this. Johan's going to go into some more detail though, so let's just get straight into it. So what is an international organization? At heart, it is a group of countries that share some common things, and then quite a few attributes that can be defined for them. The instruction file is now 140 lines long, and it will keep growing. So there's 140 kind of variables, I think that means, that can be changed depending on which realms are affected by this. As I said, there's a HRE, the Catholic Church, the Shogunate is another example of this as well. And there's all these different things that it can affect. And some examples of these options are if it has a leader or not, and if the leader is a character or a country. I have seen online that people think this could lead towards like CK3 style characters. I don't think that's what it means. I think he's aiming more towards like the Shogun or the Pope, kind of a character that is head of one of these organizations rather than a country. So the country example, I think, would be coalitions, which are covered later on, where you've got like a lead country of a coalition. The character one, I think, is more like the Pope or the Shogun, where it's a character is the top person in that organization rather than a country is, if that makes sense. If it is unique, or there can be multiples of it, I wonder if this means like the Catholic Church and then the Protestant Church kind of being a multiple of the same Christian organization, basically. If locations can be owned by it or not, member benefits or penalties, laws and policies it can have, special statuses inside the organization, how members will behave during wars, and dozens of other unique attributes. So again, there's up to 140 already of these kind of preferences that they can have, and it will differentiate them all. And as Johan covered right at the start, this is a fully dynamic system, 100% scriptable and extendable for modders. I can't wait for how this system is going to be used by modders. But the actual fact that it's dynamic and scriptable means it's a lot more kind of free-flowing than the hard-coded systems that were in EU4, for example, where the HRE is always the HRE, and how it works is hard-coded into the game. And it can change. There are those options you can choose as you progress through if you're the Emperor and things like that. But by and large, it stays the same every time you play, whereas this system has these dynamic ways it can change. I could see how this could maybe get annoying. You won't have like that fixed flavor, I guess, of the HRE. Potentially every time you play, it could change vastly from how it was historically. It'd be interesting to see if you can kind of lock them to be more historical, I guess, or, you know, the HRE never changes from how it starts as to how it later on goes on. So it kind of works more like an EU4 version, or whether it always has to be this dynamic system where crazy things can change within it. And that could kind of like mess around with some campaigns, I think. I'm not too worried about it, but again, I have seen some people talk about it, so let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you like this fully dynamic system, or do you prefer it to be a little bit more hard-coded, where things like the HRE kind of always stay the same without much variation outside of what you can kind of do in EU4 already? Outside of the attributes, membership in some of these can also take up a diplomatic relations slot, so that is going to affect your diplomatic options as you continue your campaign. And then Johan saying again, there's a lot of development time left for the game. They're going to add even more and more of these organizations, and these are going to add more unique flavor to the game. I do see a lot of people again saying like, oh no, we don't want to go down Victoria 3 where there wasn't a lot of flavor in the game to begin with. A lot of places kind of played the same. And I think this is like the second or third time Johan has kind of mentioned unique flavor in different areas. So hopefully we do get the launch having a lot of different flavor in different areas, and it doesn't all feel kind of like wishy-washy and the same no matter where you play. It does sound like that is going to be the case, that it is going to have a lot of stuff, but we obviously won't know till we get some proper in-depth stuff later on. And then next, Johan just showing off the icons for how some of these could look. I think the left-hand one is the HRE, and then the one on the right-hand side is the Catholic Church. It's got the icons there for the Catholic Church. I don't know what the gold and silver represents. Someone can let me know in the comments. But next, we're going to go on to some of the common versions of this that you will see, and that's starting off with some generic ones. Some of these have been hard-coded systems in previous Grand Strategy games, and these are not unique organizations in a campaign, but can exist in multiple instances. The first one, as we said at the beginning, is coalitions. These can be created with a country as a target when the target has an aggressive expansion beyond a certain threshold. So I guess we are going to get some memes around aggressive expansion again in this game, the same as we do in EU4, but that's where we're going to get some coalitions, you know, like the historic ones against Napoleon, where somebody kind of outsteps their boundaries and then a bunch of nations cobble together and try fight them off. If you've not played EU4 at all, that's kind of how these work. You can kind of overextend your realm, and then the other realms around you kind of cobble together a temporary alliance, take you down, and then that alliance breaks up. It doesn't stay as a full alliance later on. It's quite a good system. It is very annoying, but I think it's more annoying if you're playing the game strictly as a map painter, and I'm sure you'll be able to turn it off in the game options. But this does confirm they are coming back. And then the second one is unions. This is sort of a defensive alliance between countries that share the same ruler. This may or may not have different levels of integration. So personal unions, the famous one in EU4 is obviously Castile and Aragon. And, you know, it is a popular play style to try and make as many of these personal unions as you can and kind of gobbling up other nations without having to go to war with them. It is kind of a fun way to play it. It'd be interesting to see in EU5 how that system exactly works and if there's a little bit more gameplay to having personal unions and how they work out, rather than how it worked in EU4. And then Johan finishing off saying there are other ones like this, such as defensive leagues and tribal federations. Obviously, different areas on the map, they're going to be implemented rather than the more feudal at the start of the game versions for most of Europe and obviously areas around that. And then there are also religious organizations. The first one being the Catholic Church here. Every country in the world that is part of the Catholic faith is part of this organization. They have issues that the cardinals can vote on, and being a member has implications and restrictions. Of course, this has the added benefit of having the Catholic pops in Catholic countries paying a tithe to the church, which eventually finds its way into the papacy. And then we have a screenshot here of the monthly gold going into the papacy. As you can see, a tax, I guess that's from their own lands. Catholic holy sites giving them 2 gold, minting new coins. The Pope doesn't need to do that because he's got the tithe from 401 countries at 182 gold every month coming in, plus obviously everything above. But as you can see, he's doing very well for himself there, isn't he? Nearly 200 gold a month just coming in from all these nations, sending your money there. And as Johan points out at the bottom, one reason to go Lutheran, you don't have to pay the tithe to the Pope then, but obviously implications to that. Whether you can be affected by the papal decrees, obviously if you're part of the Catholic Church, maybe you want to leave, get a bit more kind of freedom for yourself, but you do lose the other benefits of being in the Catholic Church kind of sphere of influence. People attacking you, especially if you play as Portugal and Spain. I wonder if they'll have the division of the New World and things like that. The next two are more temporary international organizations, that is Crusades and Jihads. Once they are called, you have a target set and everyone in there acts like an alliance against that country. If you've played CK3 or any Crusader Kings game, you know how Crusades work very badly. It will be funny to see how well they work in EU5. You know, historically terrible control by the AI in Crusades, in Crusader Kings. Ironic given the name of the game, but we will see in EU5. But these are temporary ones, as I say, where they kind of sprout up. You go on a crusade and then it all falls apart. But whilst you're on that crusade, it's not like the member nations have control over each other. They can't really pass laws or anything. It's just a temporary collection of realms that are doing one thing. And then once that either is successful or not, it all falls apart. But it doesn't really affect you at all during the actual crusade, outside of the fact that you can't attack the other members of it and things like that. And the next one, I'm not even going to try pronounce because I'll just butcher it beyond belief. This phrase, though, means self-headed and is a metropolitan bishop in the European Christian confessions, which acts independently and does not depend or answer to any other hierarchical superior church authority. The different patriarchs then have their own synod of bishops to decide upon things affecting their own religious jurisdictions. So as they say here, the Eastern Roman Empire / Byzantines, etc. These are going to have these loose affiliations of bishops, and I guess they can have different rules depending on what they want to decide within them. And as you can see in the screenshot, quite a few here. Obviously Constantinople being the biggest, and then we've got a few other ones as well. Some down here, just Sophia, Alexandria on their own, doing whatever they want. But they are kind of loosely affiliated again. They're part of the same system, as it were, but each one of these will have differing laws potentially, and different people in there. As you can see, the top one has 14 members, second one having 4, and as I said, Alexandria down there on his own. Obviously, could pick up some others later on, I would imagine. And it's not just these ones. There are Orthodox and other Eastern Christian confessions that have the same system. And there are many, many more. Some other religions that have central organization and other that have fragmented ones. I will say here at the end of the dev diary, he does say that the next dev diary is going to be on religion. So I imagine some of this will be covered in more detail in the next dev diary, especially around all the different kind of major religion groups and maybe what special mechanics they have, or at least a brief overview of them anyway. And then outside of these, there are specific organizations. These are ones I think they're going to bring the main flavor to the game. These are like the HRE. There's another one at the beginning, the Tatar Yoke, that we're going to get into. These are ones that are like, you know, historically happened and are kind of programmed into the game to happen. These set up in this way historically, and we want to kind of replicate that. Whereas all the ones above, I guess outside of like the Catholic Church, are all ones that are like generic-ish. You know, they're coalitions, they're personal unions, they're different religious groups in a way that kind of like historically happened, but aren't like hard-coded as happening exactly that way. Whereas some of these are going to be set up, as I said, at the beginning, or I imagine through decisions later in the game they're going to happen. And as I said, the Tatar Yoke is the first one with a nice screenshot here of Muscovy and all the different realms around it. And the Tatar Yoke consisted of various principalities in Eastern Europe that are subject to their rule following their invasion in the 13th century. The most prominent of rulers is awarded the title of Grand Prince and is tasked with collecting tribute from the other tributaries on behalf of the Golden Horde Khan. And obviously that's going to give you a lot of power. It sounds like potentially a lot of money as well. You do collect that tribute. Can you decide not to send it all to the Golden Horde Khan? But as you can see, this is a way of having these kind of specialized areas and, you know, playing a little mini game there, I guess, of trying to take over, be the Grand Prince, and then see what you can get up to with that power. The next one is the Middle Kingdom, which is the meaning of China as being considered the cultural center of East Asia since antiquity. This organization was led by the Emperor of China, who has a number of Feng Chen, akin to vassals or tributaries, and they can be promoted up to celestial governors, equivalent to the secretariats that the Yuan dynasty used in the administrative organization of their empire. Its members have a unique social value, synthesized and unsynthesized. I probably butchered that as well. And there's a tribute system that determines how much celestial authority the emperor gets, which can be used to enforce laws and decrees. This was in EU4, but it does sound like it's going to work a lot better in EU5 as well. And as you can see here, the tribute system, who are the payers and who are the payees? So the Yuan dynasty is just the sole payer, and then the payees are numerous. As you can see, it shows you the amount and then also the proportion of the total amount that equals up to. The tribute system is a system where the emperor sends gold to the other nations in the Middle Kingdom. So again, bringing a lot of flavor to this region if you want to play in China and the region around it. And then we're going to end on the most famous one for Paradox players, the Holy Roman Empire. The glory of the ancient Roman Empire lives on in the memory of all in Europe. Charlemagne was crowned Roman Emperor, but it was not until the coronation of Otto the Great that the current HRE was born, once again recovering the ambitions of a revived and unified European empire. It was exactly the same as the original Roman Empire, but it was in Germany. Exactly the same. No comments down below about how it was vastly different. It was definitely holy, it was definitely Roman, and it was definitely an empire. We all know that. That's fact. This organization, of course, was led by the emperor, has different statuses for countries like secular and religious electors, secular princes, free cities, and beyond. It has laws that impact the organization and its members, the most important in the early game being the Golden Bull, which is a must to get approved in order to further develop the institutions of the Empire. So you definitely have to get that over the line, which I think in most campaigns will definitely happen. It does look like though there is potentially a way to delay it or maybe even not have it happen, which will be interesting. I guess there'd be the HRE, but it would never have any real kind of like internal structure to it. So we'll see. Obviously, again, we'll get more information about this in the future. There are others in the game at the moment, such as the Shogunate, the High Kingdom of Ireland, and many more, as the system is very flexible to use. So as we said at the beginning, this system can be used for many different things, coalitions, the HRE, I imagine maybe some trade affiliations and things like that could fall under this as well. So it does look like this is a very flexible system, and with it being fully moddable, I can only imagine what some mods are going to do with this. It's going to be very interesting to see. And with that, that's the end of the dev diary. And as I said, the next one is going to be on religions. It sounds like we're going to get a list of maybe all the religions that are in the game, and then I guess maybe a brief overview of the main ones. We'll see obviously in the next dev diary, but we'll leave it there for today. As always, hit that like button if you've enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new here. I'm covering EU5 up to official announcement, launch and beyond, and I also cover Crusader Kings a lot on the channel, but I do play other historical strategy games as well. But we'll leave it there, and I'll see you in the next one.